B'ezrat Hashem, today we're going to be finishing the first part of the 39 Melachot, and there's going to be really two parts to this. B'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow we're going to be starting the second of two parts as well. Now, just as a recap from yesterday, what we were discussing, we were talking about how if a person violates multiple of Melachot on Shabbat, he's going to be obligated for each and every one that he has violated. And we gave a few examples of how that may be the case. So today we're going to describe what exactly is an Av Melacha and what is a Toladah of the Melacha. We already saw from the Mishnah that says that there are 40 minus 1 Avot Melachot, which we said is 39 in total. But every Av Melacha, which we could say is a primary Melacha, is composed of what's known as a Toladah. Toladah means literally an offspring in Hebrew. So we could call this a secondary or derivative of the primary melacha that's asur to be on Shabbat. So the question is, what exactly is the difference between primary and secondary melacha? And that's going to be the subject of today. But we could say that as long as the secondary purpose of the melacha is similar enough to the primary, they're considered to both be a sumidoraita. As a way of example, the Rambam tells us in Perek Chet Halacha Bet of Hilchot Shabbat, Hazorea kol shehu chayav. If a person places a seed in the ground, sowing, not sowing with a thread and needle, however, sowing a seed into the ground, if he does even one seed, he's chayav. Hazomer ta'elan kadesh yitzmach harei me'en zorea. He says furthermore, if a person were to go and to do zmira doesn't only mean singing in Hebrew. Zmira means to pruning trees, in which they cut down the branches of the tree in order to facilitate further growth. That's another problem that's similar to sowing. What's the connection between the two of them? Let's see the following. If a person goes and places a seed in the ground, what's his overall intention? Can anyone tell me what's the intention of doing so?
To see the seed grow.
Growth. Facilitate the growth of a plant. So therefore, anything that allows the plant to grow, finish the sentence?
Is it water?
Right, would be asur to do on Shabbat. So that would not only be sowing a seed into the ground, planting. If we were to take a whole plant and place it back into the ground, that would be another aspect similar to the Av Melacha. Question becomes, how about watering? What do we water for? What's the purpose of watering?
Make the seed grow.
Make the seed grow as well. How about providing sunlight? Another thing, how about spraying with insecticides or pesticides? That would be further ideas of that Av Melacha as well. So now, the Av Melacha of Zoreh contains other toladot, other derivative melachot, and one of them that's most famous is the melacha of mashkeh, of watering the plant. So, if a person were to water the plant, that's going to be seen as a derivative. Why is that a derivative and not considered primary? So the Rambam tells us something very famous. It's a very famous idea from the Rambam that is quite controversial. Many Rishonim argue against this idea, but the Rambam says the following idea based on the Gemara Masechet Shabbat Daf Ayin Gimel Bet. The Gemara says the following: Hazorea v'Hazomer v'Hanotea v'Markiv v'Mavrich Kulam Melacha Achat. It says if a person places a seed in the ground, or if he prunes the trees by cutting the branches, or he takes a plant and he plants it, or he takes two seeds and grafts them together, all these things are considered one melacha. So the question is, what exactly does that mean that's one melacha? The Rambam wants to tell us that all these things are considered an Av Melacha. Each single one of these things compose different Avot Melachot, even though they're all under the general category of sowing. Why would that be the case? Because when a person looks at these individual actions, they all compose of the same thing. You're placing something into the ground. When you put a seed into the ground, there's really not that much difference in putting a plant into the ground, or if you're taking other seeds and grafting them into the ground. Placement of something into the ground itself is sufficient to call something an Av Melacha. When is something considered a Toladah according to the Rambam? The Rambam holds if it has the same purpose, but it looks a little different. If I place water onto a plant, or if I turn on some lights that would facilitate growth, that might also be under the category of sowing, but it doesn't have the same action as putting something into the ground. Or if I spray something with insecticides, even though that might be a summa d'oraita because it facilitates growth, nonetheless, being that it's a different action than placing something into the ground, that is considered a secondary melacha. It's a derivative. So, to give you another example, let's say if a person were to do the Melachot Hotza'ah. Hotza'ah is when a person takes something from a Reshut HaYachid, a private domain, like a home, and he takes it to the outside public domain. The same thing would be conversely true if he wants to do it vice versa. If he takes it from the outside and brings it into the inside private domain, that's also Sumid Doraita. Those are the Avot Melachot, the primary aspect of taking one thing from one domain from another. How about carrying something 4 amot or 6 feet or 8 feet in the Reshut HaRabim, in the public domain? Does that have any similarity to taking from one to another? Does it have it? But it's not really similar because I'm not taking from one domain to a second domain. It's all within the same domain. However, since you are transporting something, but not entirely like the Av Melacha, therefore it's only considered to be secondary. That's according to the Rambam. However, the Sefer Yerim argues against this point, and he states that in truth, no. That's not what exactly it is. An Av Melacha is whatever the Gemara tells us. That when the Mishnah says, Zoreya, that's an Av Melacha, only that is an Av Melacha. Every single thing else besides that is only a Toladah. So even though the Rambam counted planting and pruning and grafting as different Avot Melachot, the Yerim would say no. That's not the case. These are all considered derivatives, even though they might look similar to the Av Melacha itself. That is considered secondary and it's a Toladah. So the question is, okay, fine, we have Av Melacha, we have a Toladah, we have primary and secondary Melachot. Does that mean that one's assumed the Oraita, the other one assumed the Labanan? What's the difference between the two of them? And the truth is as follows. There's no difference between the two of them. They're really both assumed the Oraita. If a person were to fulfill any of them, whether it's an Av or it's a Toladah, he would be chayav on any account. It wouldn't make a difference whether it's primary or secondary. So what would be the distinction? So the Gemara tells us as follows. That if a person violates multiple Av Melachas on Shabbos, he is going to be liable for each Melacha that he's done. For instance, if a person were to plant on Shabbat, if a person were to dig on Shabbat, if a person were to go and he would bake on Shabbat, all these things are different Melachot, and for each Melacha he did, let's say unintentionally, he would have to bring a different Korban for each one. But let's say a person were to do an Av and its Toladah, the primary and secondary Melacha of a specific category. For instance, if a person were to place a seed in the ground and then water it on Shabbat, so he did the Av Melacha of sowing, of placing a seed in the ground, and its secondary Toladah of watering. How many Korbanot does he need to bring? How many does he need to bring? So you might have thought 2. 1 for sowing, 1 for watering. Gemara tells us no. Since the secondary Toladah is a subcategory of the Av, you only bring 1. So for each general Melacha you bring 1, the Toladah becomes consumed as part of that. So that is the difference between the two of them. Now, that is pretty much the understanding. The halachic matters between Av and its Toladah, and that's just a little machloket rishonim between the Rambam and the Sefer Yerim, how exactly we're supposed to understand it. So the last few minutes, I'd just like to quote some nice midrashim and finish it off with that will allow us to facilitate a further understanding of why the Avot Melachot is so important. There's a idea that's brought down by the Tikkunei HaZohar, according to Kabbalah, it's a very Kabbalah. Good way to end this part of the Shir. It says in Tikkunei HaZohar, Tikkun Samachet the following. The reason that we have 39 Melachot, why do we do 39 Melachot on Shabbat? Where does it come from? So it tells us the following. Eser lava taya layid lechivya. When Adam and Chava, when they sinned from the Etz Hadat, so who exactly were cursed over there? There were 4 beings that were cursed. Adam was cursed, Chava was cursed, the Nachash, the snake was cursed, and finally the ground was cursed. It says, the Zohar, there were 10 curses that were given to the snake. We know already some of them were, his legs were chopped off, his armor were chopped off, he had to eat from the dust of the ground. So with besides that, there were others as well. 10 curses for the snake. The Eser Adam, 10 of them were given to Adam. Eser Chava, 10 of them were given to Chava, which we know would be including childbirth and pregnancy. V'tisha la'ara, and finally 9 of them were given to the ground. If you take 10, 10, 10 plus 9, what do you get? 39. So based on this, it's brought down that the 39 melachot that we do, where we refrain from on Shabbat, is in order to serve as an atonement from the chet of Adam Harishon. That's what the Tikkunei HaZohar brings down. This is also reiterated in the Shlach Kadosh. He brings down in his commentary to Masechet Chulin. He says that originally when man was in the Garden of Eden in his most pristine state, he was supposed to serve Hashem in a completely spiritual manner. There was not supposed to be any physical labor whatsoever. Everything was already completely taken care of. However, because of his fallen state, after he ate from the Etz Hadat, he was no longer in a position to get benefits from the spiritual state, and therefore he had to come down to this world and work hard. And during this time in this world, he has to partake of the 39 Melachot. He has to plant, he has to harvest, he has to make a fire. He has to do all these physical things in order to survive and to thrive in our day-to-day life. But by refraining from doing this on Shabbat, he is perfecting this midah and bringing himself back to the pristine state that was once applicable to him. And for this, we understand why Shabbat is considered like what's known in Chazal as Mein Olam Haba. It's considered like a miniature version of Olam Haba. Just in Olam Haba, there's not going to be any exertion, as it were. Everything is going to be in a pristine state as it should have been once. So too on Shabbat, we refrain from doing it as well. And this is brought down as well by the Noam Elimelech. He writes at the beginning of his Parsha Sevet V'oim, where he brings this idea that by us doing the Lametet Melachot, he says, he says you should know that all of the bad sins that come to this world is rooted from the strength of the Etz Hadat, the tree of our knowledge. He says, as we see that the ground was cursed with 39 curses. Obviously, when he says the ground was cursed 39 curses, not referring down to the ground. There's no 10 of them given to Adam and Chava and the snake as well. And he says, from this, the impurity comes to man. But when Bnei Yisrael, when they keep the Shabbat and it is 39 Melachot, he fixed the 39 sins and curses that were brought down onto the earth. So this is just a little midrash to understand the importance of why the 39 Melachot were placed. Of course, we already know that we saw that there was an idea that's brought down by the Psukim when it says Ela Hadvarim, and that from that pasuk we saw that there are not 39 Klalot or 39 Melachot that are bring down. However, the Tikkun Zohar goes a little step further and says that it all has its root earlier on from the original sin of Adam HaRishon. With this, we're able to tie and pshat and sew together and make a very beautiful, total hashkafic outlook of why the Melachot have been there in place to begin with. So B'ezrat Hashem, we'll start with the second Shir B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow, and with that we'll continue to next week when we start the first Melachah of Zoreah. Baruch Olam, Amen v'Amen.